Welcome to Change Shapers, the podcast where we know that the only certainty is uncertainty. We know everybody hates change, so we're on a mission to inspire people to see change differently. Our guest lineup of thought leaders, innovators, and transformation pioneers will guide us through uncertainty and discover new opportunities which arise in these interesting times. Today we're joined by Kevan Smith, a creative and branding specialist inspiring others to be themselves to truly make an impact as a business. We hear the phrase content is king a lot, but what does engaging, honest, consistent and impactful content really look like? Kevan gives us a deep dive into how heartfelt content builds connections, strengthens brands and supports change. As someone currently experiencing unpredictable radical change as part of his Brighton United and Business United projects, Kevan explores the power of human alchemy, uniting communities and how diverse perspectives can come together to create transcendent results. Our guest today has had a hugely successful career through film, television and event production and is now director of corporate video and photography production company Epiphany Content. He is a powerful voice on all things content strategy and self-promotion, as well as being one of the heads behind Brighton United, a citywide initiative to increase global majority representation in co-working spaces and help build professional relationships and collaborations across various sectors and communities. Kevan Smith, welcome.
Oh, thanks for that introduction, John.
No, it's really great to have you, and I think it's really interesting when we read the rap sheets of people, and you know they're so sprawling. They're kind of they can touch on so many different aspects. But just for our listeners at the top, how did you get started in content, and you know how did it all start, and where did you come from?
Well, it started with my career in the film and TV industry, and a production rigger for over 20 years, and it's just having that access, that opportunity coming from an underprivileged background, and kind of got my foot in the door in events, and it's life-changing. And so kind of going up the ranks in the production industry, I found my way into the film and TV side, where my first time on set, I was just blown away, not just by the money, but by being a part of something that was so polished. So I just want to know, how can I get more projects like this, which led me to taking a course at London Film Academy, Foundations in Filmmaking. And that for me, that was the epiphany when I realized just how much storytelling and communication meant to me. So that's where it all started.
Amazing. And I love that word storytelling. And I think a lot of our guests kind of bring that up. What is it you think storytelling brings to organizations, and why is that important? And you know, especially in this time nowadays where companies have so many stories to tell, what can kind of help people stand out?
I think focusing your stories on the people who you want to connect with. We all understand storytelling is, you know, the first thing that we learn to identify with when we're young. Our parents tell us stories, and that's how we learn things to be wary of, or you know, things that are maybe good to incorporate. And so we have this understanding of the power of storytelling, but I'm not sure that a lot of businesses have broken away from the outbound approach, where you're telling the stories that are about you. And there's been this huge shift where now no one wants to be sold to online. No one wants a projected, contrived story. People want to really connect. They want a resonance. They really want to feel that bond. And it's hard for people to feel a bond if you only go around talking about yourself.
Yeah.
So our stories have to be rooted in the things that are relevant and important to our audience. And
as someone who's kind of leveraging LinkedIn very much, you know, you're really kind of succeeding in that. Can you give an example of a time when you've not talked about yourself, but you've been able to kind of connect to an organization or something from Epiphany?
Is it for myself personally, I would say my first experience was, and this was with video. You know, I started off in photography, and then that grew into the video production side of things. And it was when I made my first video on LinkedIn, and it was just a summary of a networking event that I just come from, and it's quite a big one in Kent. And so I just decided I would just say my experiences, and this was before video, you know, was such a popular medium on LinkedIn. And yeah, just the fact that I made the video walking out of the event, and so it both connected with not just the people who attended, but the people who'd been, just standing like in that spot, just a few minutes before, and it was just this kind of honest feedback that people. It resonated with them, and they could identify with it. And I was just so surprised how my inbox became so flooded with people who had experienced the event, who appreciated me telling my experiences. And so the next event I showed up to, so many people, it spread so far and wide. And that was the first time I realized just how like wildfire content can be.
Yeah. No, it's really amazing to kind of hear, and I think you work with small organisations and startups, but you also work with bigger brands. Siemens, Mars, Beats by Dre. What do you think are the kind of challenges that everyone is facing around content? And are there any opportunities that you feel that you're kind of discovering at this point, where we've heard the phrase content is king for a long time, and I think it's changing, and what do you see as the opportunities ahead in terms of content?
I think the thing that people struggle with is that clarity, like what do I show up, what do I talk about, how do I not sound like a broken record? And first and foremost, you should sound a bit like a broken record. I think we have to know our cornerstone, like what's our foundation built on, and everything has to go back to that. It always has to lead back to that why. And you may grow to encompass other kind of either dimensions or it might be relative in different ways as you grow, but you're always going to be rooted in that foundation and that why. And that's probably the biggest challenge, is for businesses to have a way of uncovering that why in a way that they're going to be confident speaking on that platform, from that value perspective for the next 10, 15 years. And so I've been working with a performance coach, with someone who's helping me to grow and link together the kind of different sides of my businesses and ventures. And that for me is just so profound, is someone who you can trust, who puts a mirror up to you, because it has to be rooted in truth, and helps you to uncover that why that you'll be proud to represent you for years to come. So it's the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity, is to delve deep into that why and make sure that it's communicated consistently moving forwards.
And you mentioned the word truth there, and the why. And I think so often we see and hear about honesty, transparency, culture, all of these types of often buzzwords in organisations. Your 4 core values at Epiphany are positivity, truth, clarity, and consistency. How do you help brands how do you inspire those in brands? And do you think there's a kind of one size fits all solution to get those kind of values across? Sorry.
Well, first and foremost, you work with people who resonate with your values, and you have to have that continuity. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to have a common vision on what you're working towards. And so the positivity aspect that comes from even my first days at London Film Academy, and realizing, wow, this is for me. I love that connection and that chance to put together something very precise and succinct that someone instantly connects with. And there's a really special joy in that for me. And so that positivity, that is just part and parcel to why I do the work that I do. Definitely. And the truth aspect, that comes in with the strategy sessions when I'm working with a client, and when we are understanding what's at the core. And that's maybe something that I've learned from the business coaches that I've worked with, is that it's about putting a mirror up and then making sure to grab the sound bites, the things that a person shares and you pick up on, and you feed it back to them. Maybe they didn't even realize that this was something that was very important to them or coming up consistently. But that's the truth aspect. It's being a really good listener and learning how to just put a mirror up to the people that you're connecting with and that you're working with, and that becomes their cornerstone. And the clarity aspect is that's preparation. That's always going back to that cornerstone and then building on it. And it is something, again, it's not a projection. It's not how I wish to be perceived. It's what I'm consistently saying and having someone giving me an unpolarized reflection of that. And when you have that clarity and that understanding of truth, then really systematically thinking about how can I get this message out over time in a way that build the storytelling, that connects with why people are showing up on a platform. And if you have a strategy in place and you're very practical about how you map that out, that's where the consistency comes in. Yeah. And if you believe that what you're doing is of benefit to your audience or to the community, then it's your duty. You have a responsibility to communicate your service in such a way that it's going to connect with the right people to better their lives. And so, it's a bit duty bound to be consistent in putting out our truth in a positive and clear fashion.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, we had a conversation with Bud Johnston, and he said about companies who they come across like they're trying to look like they're doing good rather than actually doing good. And then another of our guests, Rob Cunningham, said around sustainability that, people forget to actually tell all of their messages. They just try and cherry pick the absolute best ones rather than that kind of consistent. And it sounds like you're kind of saying the same thing of, just making sure that you tell the whole thing and the consistency and that clarity. Sometimes it's okay to share your failures because actually they make you more approachable as a brand. Would you say that that's...
I do. I think that is a key component of, and this is something I follow a number of thought leaders who are very passionate about personal branding and community building, just like myself. And you get this notion of transparency, but also we have to be clear on whether or not, we are, I say an outbound, inbound, that's marketing jargon, but it's essentially, are you sending out a bunch of cold emails and do you believe in the volume of your messaging and eventually you'll get through? Or do you believe in building relationships, telling stories that are rooted in the interest of your audience and then nurturing that relationship over time? And there are different mentalities and approaches. One is not, more valid than the other, but that's where it really starts. And so if you are clear and you have an inbound approach, you put out the kind of messaging and stories that bring people to you, that's where that transparency is going to help clarify your values. Yeah. And like I said before, you work with people when your values align. And so putting out content that is really rooted in in your why, in your values, that is a huge advantage if that's your approach, your methodology. What I think the problem is a lot of corporations or even individuals, they maybe kid themselves a bit and think that they're in it for the relationship building, but they're actually operating on an outbound volume of messaging approach. And so again, you got to call yourself and you have to be very clear on where you lie. And there's nothing wrong with being outbound focused, but my methodology, my approach is 100% based on inbound, and it's on adding value to your audience, to your community.
Absolutely. And a lot of focus on Gen Z at the minute is that they're aligning with brands that are the same as their values. And are there any brands that you see that are really kind of nailing that? What you just explained there of that kind of being true to themselves, putting across their values and stuff. Are there any brands that particularly inspire you when you look at their approach? Sorry to put you on the
I'd say from it's something that is now on my radar a bit more over the past year, and I'm very proudly Gen X, and it's interesting the different worldviews. It has how that shifts and evolves, and so it's a learning process for a lot of the people in my age demographic. Definitely. And so I'm learning to appreciate the brands who operate with. Who know their values and put that they don't put profit ahead of I think it's the people, profit, and planet. And again, these are maybe buzzwords that we're not it wasn't the standard 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think Tony's chocolate, apparently I keep hearing Tony's is doing great things, and it's okay to, sit and gorge myself on their chocolate. And Red Roaster, Red Roaster here in Brighton.
Yes.
I went to a panel discussion where the CEO was, kind of just discussing, and it was just so transparent how they do their best to operate in a carbon neutral or carbon positive way. But at the same time, there's some areas where logistically they couldn't operate as a business. And I thought that, that honesty about this is what we're aspiring to, but we're not going to pretend like we're perfect or like that it's not at a cost to the bottom line. And but they're clear on their commitment to the community. And so, I'd say Red Roaster is probably, especially around the Sussex area, one of the benchmarks.
Great. It's always good to hear. And you mentioned there about a panel and, conferences. And I feel like a lot of your focus around connections and stuff, and you seem to be someone who's very... Personal connections are an important part of your brand, a part of your business, part of your outlook. And you provided a course on human alchemy, which, is around connections, around how those connections happen and stuff. Can you explain that a bit more to our listeners? And I think it's such a beautiful phrase, and I'd just like to hear in your own words what you feel that is and why it's important to talk about at this time.
I think of human alchemy like an orchestra, and I had this amazing workshop, the retreat this summer, which is all about finding your words, how you communicate about things, and human alchemy was at the core of it. And thinking about, you think tuning forks, you have two tuning forks they're to the same frequency, and if you strike one, then one on the other side of the room continues to reverberate. And so I think knowing your frequency, knowing your pitch, that's really where human alchemy starts. And then from there, it's putting together an assortment array of, say, like instruments or people, people who have something to share, and in a way that it makes harmony. And so we don't want to all be on the exact same frequency, but if we are harmonious in how we assemble, then we can make something that's really beautiful, really moving, and connecting. And so human alchemy is all about understanding your frequency, understanding your values, and then connecting with others who have complementary values, not even necessarily the exact same. We can't all be the same and have the same experiences. But if we are receptive to the people who, our values mesh, and we come together with a vision for what we want to achieve, and we can communicate in a way that there's harmony in our workings together, that's when we manifest things that are as beautiful, as the most moving symphony. And so, human alchemy is really about how do we innovate, how do we come together from different age groups and from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultures, different maybe different genders, and so it's looking at 7 different. I look at it from the lens of 7 different demographics, but very clearly, you have to share values, you have to have a common vision for what you want to achieve, and you have to have a voice that is no friction in your communication. So that commonality between those elements, and that's what human alchemy is all about.
Amazing, and I love that idea because I think. We often talk on the podcast and in a lot of the stuff that Casares does of diversity is where innovation happens. Without having diverse voices, as you say, that doesn't have to necessarily mean across socioeconomic or race. It could be across markets. It could be across, sustainability ideas in South America that inspire something to happen in Europe because it's a completely different way of thinking, their approach, it's a newer market in some stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting to focus on diversity. But from your experience, how can human alchemy kind of take something like a buzzword like culture or anything and actually make a real difference? And are you seeing any kind of examples of that where these pioneering ideas are coming from different, different sources, rather than, let's be honest, the same old pre-industrial revolution setups that so much of business, unfortunately, still is in.
I would like to think, that there are examples, real-world examples of how this is manifested, and here we have all this progress. But I think that we're maybe at the stages of only having an awareness to the disproportionate influence or weight that some people or some demographics, some groups have in terms of leverage. And we live in a capitalist society, and so we're very resource driven, and so we end up giving the majority of maybe if you think about who has the louder voice, who has more influence in a conversation, then that tends to be weighted to the people with certain resources. And human alchemy is just really all about leveling that. It's throwing out the egocentric. My voice is has more impact, and so I think a lot of it is learning to value the contributions of other, maybe less privileged or people who have less leverage, and there's a balance between the value that you associate with those experiences and those voices. And so it's really about looking ourselves in the mirror and saying, do we really see each other as equal and having equal contributions, equal to offer?
Yeah, and I think one of our previous guests, Abid Khan from the Institute of Directors, said, if you're listening to only stale, pale, and male voices, then you're never gonna move on. We're never gonna move on. And I think so. From your experience, it sounds like we're in a period of change, and hopefully the leveling through ideas such as human alchemy is going to allow us to kind of move things forward. That's really.
I think
that's really inspiring.
There's an awareness now. Who is it? Matt Hunter, the CEO of PlusX Innovation.
Yeah.
He commented recently how there's been a data-driven study that's come out recently that there's about to be a report on, which shows how there's such a disproportionate benefit to having certain connections in life, and I think that's something that maybe the disenfranchised or people outside of the mainstream. Obviously, it's very clear. Who has a huge impact on how on your trajectory in terms of career or business. And but now there's been this study where the data very clearly outlines how who has a big impact on what you have the opportunity to learn. And that's limiting. And so now that we're actually analyzing it and we're looking at it from a data-driven point of view, now you can move the needle forward. Now there's empirical evidence that shows how segregation or groups operating in a way that's less inclusive or that doesn't amplify the voices of the marginalized, that's to the detriment of those groups. And so now you have to put your money where your mouth is. I think we all talk about collaboration and wanting to work together, but if we are realizing that our ways of operating are not including more diverse voices, now there's data to show that that's to the detriment of those groups. Is that who we really are?
And that data can then allow us to, we come back to the storytelling then, because we can really tell those stories properly. And I think what you just mentioned there about, the groups, not their situations, they haven't had those, they don't have the resources, they haven't had the access to the resources. And you've experienced that firsthand. In recent months, you've been very vocal about co-working spaces and business spaces and opportunities within the business world for the global majority aren't necessarily there. And what's can you give us a bit of a rundown of you spread that story and what's happened off the back of you sharing your own experience?
Well, starting with the why, it's I kind of experienced in my time in Brighton. It's quite liberal, progressive, open-minded, inclusive, but I still struggled to build the relationships with companies, with key individuals in ways that I felt would lead to my business growing, and it struck me as peculiar, and so I in commentary shared that on LinkedIn, and I didn't share it because I was looking for something to happen. I shared it because it was my experience, and I thought that someone should stand up and tell the truth. And much to my surprise, there was scores of people who could identify with that message. And on the other side, there has been such a concerted effort. It's just people have really mobilized, and they said, starts off with values. They say, I understand and I'm in accordance with the why. This is important to you, and I stand with you. This shouldn't be the way. And now we have this vision of making a more integrated and connected business landscape where people are on equal footing and have equal opportunity, hopefully moving forwards. And that's our vision. And now our coalition, we're working together, we're people from the city, people from the business sector, from global majority backgrounds. We are coming together and doing our best to give equal value to everyone's contributions and voice. And on the other side, there's this, there's action. Now there's more inclusion of global majority representation, or there's more efforts towards stemming that. And so we're partnering, we're working with different groups, with different spaces to stem, so that no one has to have that feeling of being on the outside. And it all started off with just an honest message, just sharing, an experience. And so that's the power of content and what can happen when you put a message out in a way that the communities realize this is something I want to be a part of.
And it goes back to the values again, the positivity, authenticity, whilst it wasn't necessarily a positive experience, what you shared, it's sharing something that you talked about, opportunities in there. You didn't just post kind of moaning about, you posted clear, this is what's happening, what can we do? And as you say, then mobilise. And it's become a movement. I believe, Brighton United is what the kind of overarching umbrella term is. And it's started conversations. It's already had an impact, I feel, in some of the events and panels I've experienced of it, even if it's just being talked about. Obviously, change is slow. We know that. But how do you see this growing? Just from a Brighton United, a specific local movement. How do you see that growing? And what's kind of on your radar for this movement?
As it starts, it's about the community first. The communities who we're looking to serve, and I think that there has to be an equal vision of having a positive impact on the business community. Like Brighton and Hove as a city, and there has to be a vision for having a positive impact on the community that we're looking to serve, the global majority community. Yeah. And so, thinking what's a win-win for both sides. And so on one side, mobilizing, it's pulling together the global majority citizens of Brighton and Hove who want to be a part of growing business and more commerce. And on the other side, it's businesses, it's city planners, people who envision a Brighton Hove that is more collaborative and more nurturing to the community, more integrated as a whole. And we're at that point now, that we have great collection on both sides, people who want to be a part of this vision. And so Brighton United is in the middle. We're a communications service, essentially. We're all about bridging that gap, helping to make sure the voices, the needs, and the concerns of the global majority are shared in a way that they can resonate with the business community and networking spaces, and then the opportunities that exist for networking or for co-working and just business collaborations, making sure that those messages are shared in a way that they resonate with the global majority. And this is it's no different than my love for content, that connection and communication and being clear on what you stand for, what's true, and sharing that consistently. It's genuinely no different. And so we're looking at Brighton United as a model. Because again, going back to human alchemy, if you and there's intersectionality, if you know what it's like to feel disenfranchised, then even if you're black or brown, you should know that it can be challenging for a woman in a male-dominated industry or work environment. And so we should have each other's backs. And so this Brighton United initiative is nothing more than a template for how marginalized groups with a less voice, less value associated, less leverage, how they can have their concerns voiced in a way that they can connect with opportunities in the business community, and so we're looking to expand Brighton United so that it's actually Business United, and Business United then reflects the neurodivergent community, or they can come to Business United and we'll work with you to help make sure your voice is clearly heard and valued in places where business and professional growth is a possibility.
I mean, if that's not a change shaper, I don't know what is. It's really inspiring because as you say, it's hearing from all those voices. And I think one of the things that I really wanted to pick up on just there was, content is communication, and you've said that, and vice versa, and just the idea that these stories being told in the kind of traditional way isn't going to connect with the audience that it's meant for. And I think that's so often when we're talking about transformation, when we're talking about a company-wide transformation, a change, and the message just isn't getting across because it's not being told in a way that will resonate with the people that need to align with, whether it's a company vision, whether it's a culture. And it's really powerful to hear someone saying, as the connector, you're in the middle of the 2 sides, the 5 sides, the 7, and bringing that through and sharing those insights in a way that actually connects. And I think that's really, really powerful.
That for me is a big opportunity for businesses. Is how can you find maybe your workforce or your stakeholders and get their messages out in a way that it is in line with what you stand for, in line with your why. And how do you take, going back to human alchemy, maybe you have someone living with a disability who can share your company's value or vision in a way from the perspective of someone who's maybe not a middle-class white guy, and not. I mean, everybody's story is valid, no matter what your background is. But the more, if you can paint a picture from more perspectives, more sides, then it gives it more depth and dimension. And that's really the opportunity, is when you onboard team members who share your values, then and you give them the opportunity to communicate from their perspective, that'll resonate in a completely different way than if you're really always towing the line for this really a vanilla approach to your messaging. So
that's I agree 100%. And I just really wanted to touch on the last thing of, you mentioned LinkedIn, of you started this movement on LinkedIn. We hear so much about social media, it's dead, it's not connecting. How are you leveraging a platform that is, it is a money maker? You mentioned capitalism before. Everything on LinkedIn is to make LinkedIn and Facebook and Meta, all of the different ones, money. How do you find leveraging a platform like that for your success or your brand's success? And do you see that there's any other potential opportunities elsewhere in this age where potentially things are getting lost on LinkedIn? A lot of people mention that I posted and it didn't connect with anyone.
I think it's being very focused, and who's going to benefit you to have a relationship with. And so if we're looking to have conversations with individuals or even communities who's going to make a difference. That has to be the focus. It's not on how can I come across like a rock star? How can I have hundreds of likes on a post and people to think, like, yeah, I'm on trend. You have to be really clear on what's more important to you. Are you just wanting optics, or are you wanting real connection? And if you're wanting real connection, then creating messages that are very specific for either an individual or very specific person with experiencing a certain, problem, or people with it. Yeah. And so if we're clear on who we need to have a conversation with, and we shape our messaging so that it's focused on them. That's the first kind of key focus. And then from there, it's about meeting people in real life and then pairing that with your online content. So think about your LinkedIn presence as a business card, as a handshake, and it'll get you that face-to-face meeting. And so that's one of the focuses for the people that I work with is let's have someone in mind, and let's craft something that's going to get you in front of them where they already feel connected, and that's going to give you a huge advantage versus people who don't have that presence on LinkedIn, who don't have that icebreaker, who helps to build that know-like trust bond with the people who you need to do business with.
Absolutely, and I could go on for hours around all the community stuff and the Brighton United, but we're kind of finishing a lot of the episodes on this series of what's your outlook for the future, and as an expert in content and community building, how do you feel the future looks in terms of kind of hearing the diverse voices and companies kind of moving away from that pre-industrial revolution capitalist focus?
I'm encouraged, and a lot of it is, like I said, there's this awareness of that things maybe haven't been fair in a way, and that we need a more democratic way of getting people's voices out and giving credence to them. And I think that it's people know, especially with Gen Zs, are so values led, and millennials, similar, and so we have to operate in a way where we're facilitating the kind of environment that people with certain values want to be a part of, and I think our minds are open to that, and so that means that people are listening. The people with leverage, people who can open doors, they are saying, how can we be led to do better? And that's exciting. There's I think the horizon is really bright, just because people want to take on the voices and the approaches of younger generations, and I think that's where the real opportunity is on taking in perspective from people from different demographics who maybe we'd marginalized before, and it's happening now.
And it's really inspiring to hear such a positive outlook. Kevan, so many bits from today, but where can people find you listening to this? Where are you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Kevan Smith. Or at Epiphany Content, epiphanycontent.com on my website, or check me out on Instagram. I'm much more consistent on Instagram these days, so also at Kevan Smith.
Awesome. And what have you got coming up in the next few months, either on Epiphany or Brighton United?
Ooh, Brighton United is really exciting. We're looking at our first launch event, and so this is something we're working and coordinating with Brighton Dome on hosting an event with them, and with Epiphany Content. It's busy days at the moment, but I have a client flying over from America to work with me later this month. A number of exciting projects where we're delivering strategy, content creation, and scheduling of months worth of content for clients. And so, it's a busy season, but it's exciting.
And for any listeners that have really been inspired by hearing about Brighton United and Business United, can people just reach out, and what's the best way to kind of share their story with you, or to lend their support to this movement? The
best way is to contact me directly through LinkedIn. We are setting up the Brighton United at brightonunited.co.uk. So we have our domain, and we're building the website now for the community. But we've just now voted in a board of directors and trustees. So it's been a fast and furious 5 months since this all started, and the community is now in motion. So I'd But for now, just reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, I'm really hoping we can have you back for a future season and hear how much it's grown, because it's a bit like wildfire. So it's really inspiring. All the links are in the show notes, and it's just over to me to say thank you so much for joining us, Kevan.
Thanks, John.
Well, there you have it. Powerful insights into the world of business and what lies ahead. Thank you to all our Change Shapers listeners for tuning into our podcast, and to our guests today for sharing their knowledge with our community. Our episodes are designed to spark conversation and start collaborations. So if you're interested by what you heard, then please share with your colleagues or on social media and join the chat with our guest today. Change Shapers is part of the Casaris brand, and we can be found on LinkedIn. Just search for COSARIS, or on Instagram as Change Shapers Podcast. Please subscribe, rate and review Change Shapers Podcast. We can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you find your favourite pods. So there you have it. Our first season of Change Shapers Podcast is over. I've been Jay Taylor, and I think together we've made a little dent in turning uncertainty into opportunity. Keep your eyes peeled on social media for announcements about our next guests, and I'll catch you in the next season.